Have I ever told you about the time that me and Civ 7 designer Ed Beach were both Sisyphus rolling a boulder up the same hill? And how Civilization 7's most promising feature is the product of a 20-year struggle? Let me explain. Ed Beach deserves recognition for his contributions to modern strategy games. He was lead designer on Civilization 7 and 6. He also designed the expansion packs for Civilization 5, which completely reshaped the game and made it what it is today. All this on top of his prolific work designing board games, and the man doesn't even have his own Wikipedia article. Perhaps because he doesn't have a Wikipedia article, you might not know that Ed Beach actually did a lot of great work on Civilization 3. Here's his name on the box, and here's a screenshot of him playing multiplayer Civ 3, along with CPL admin Canuck Soldier and Ultimate Civ 4 fan Sulla. If you don't know who all these people are, there is actually so much exciting Civ lore I have for you. Please subscribe to the channel, but today we're talking about Ed Beach, and he is a bit of a difficult man to pin down. On one hand, he seems like someone with particular ideas of how certain systems should work. Many systems copied from Civ 5 to 6 were the ones that he had made for Civ 5, like archaeology and religion. But he changed, for example, the movement system in the game. In Civ 3, 4, and 5, if you had one movement point left, you could move to any tile, even rough terrain. In Civ 6, you always need the full amount of movement points, unless it's the only move that you're making for the turn. Frustratingly, this would often leave you with movement points left, and the game will prompt you to take an action because of that. But there's a river in front of you, and I guess you can't do anything. This was a dramatic change. It's one that Ed Beach has admitted was controversial among members of his development team, but this is actually the way it works in war games that Ed Beach used to work on, like great campaigns of the American Civil War. They also have a more rigid zone of control, which Civ 6 introduced to the series as well. So, he has specific ideas about how certain systems should work, and he often draws from games that he's already worked on, but I wouldn't call him a rigid thinker. He puts a lot of focus towards troubleshooting problems that the fans have when they're playing the game, and keeping that in mind, he has an incredible tendency to change systems and experiment with great abandon. I've talked before about how this led to a lot of the big changes that a lot of us don't like in Civilization 7, but despite all that we know about him, I still think that it's a bit surprising that he took one of the scenarios that he designed way back for Civilization 3 and slammed it dead center into the middle of Civilization 7. Ed Beach's contributions to Civ 3 are absolutely fascinating from numerous perspectives. Some of these ideas seem to be borrowed from his work with board games. An earlier version of Age of Discovery sounds a lot like Here I Stand. And for the first time in the series, Ed Beach designed scenarios using victory points, probably most associated with European-style board games. At the same time, they added shortcuts for player elimination, something that I would also associate with different styles of board games. I can't stress enough what a debt I personally owe to Ed Beach for this. He designed the Fall of Rome Conquest, which gave us the city elimination feature, which is absolutely key for all the mod work I've done for multiplayer Civ 3. But one particular mod that he designed for this game was very clearly copy and pasted into Civ 7. See, on launch, Civ 7 had different legacy paths, which served as objectives or victory conditions in a roundabout way. In the exploration age, your economic objective is treasure fleets. You gain these by harvesting resources in distant lands. Then you ship them back to your home continent and gain 100 gold along with some legacy points. In Civ 3's Age of Discovery, your objective is victory points, gained by using treasure fleets. You gain treasure by harvesting resources in distant lands. Then you ship them back to your home continent and gain 200 gold along with some victory points. This is very clearly an idea that Ed Beach has had in his head for 20 years and has finally acquired enough authority and respect at his job to bring his vision to AAA reality. So yeah, this is Age of Discovery. I've ranked it before as the best of the Conquest scenarios. Ed Beach just has excellent taste here. It is a really cool idea. Naval combat in a lot of the prior Civ games has been underwhelming, because often there's not really anything for you to fight for. This game gives you something to fight for. Piracy is obviously something that we'd all love to play around with, and Civ games across the ages have never given sufficient incentive to do overseas colonization. Often they have pieces that seem to support colonial gameplay, but even with these specially designed tools, colonization is usually, at best, incidentally solid. It doesn't win you the game. The treasure fleet system can also produce some really cool potential gameplay moments and strategies. Suddenly, ports and canals become really important. Having way stations and vision throughout shipping routes, or faraway bases for piracy, becomes useful. You actually need to project your power. Age of Discovery was difficult for them to design and required several iterations, but it was a complete success, with some very cool ideas behind it. I could see why Ed Beach would want to revisit this system, but there are a few potential pitfalls. If you consider yourself an armchair game designer, I want you to take a second to think about what these issues could be. As a reminder, you're planting cities across the ocean and sending treasure home to your capital, dodging pirates in the process. Why should they have been cautious about bringing this into Civilization 7? Pause the video if you need to and try to take a guess. The first problem is that this gameplay loop, while very cool thematically, is potentially just very unfun on a mechanical level. Doing piracy is enjoyable, but being preyed upon is not. Getting your treasure home is fundamentally an escort quest. What's the counterplay if the enemy has naval control? Just leave your treasure in the harbor to rot? The AI won't do that, but human players absolutely will, and because this is now a mainline title, this needs to work for multiplayer too. If players give up on producing or shipping treasure, then nobody gets to have any fun, not even the pirates. Unit control is also an issue here. The system involves moving around economic resources on the map, which is not really something that you usually see in strategy games. Titles like Europa Universalis and Rome Total War have ship combat and the ability to blockade ports or privateer, but you are not chasing down individual trading vessels or controlling treasure ships of your own. For the human player, this just means additional micro. It's not very interesting unless you do something wrong, but it is a substantial challenge for the computer player. The AI in Age of Discovery is only just pretty good, and the AI's ability to control units intelligently famously took a bit of a nosedive during the switch to one unit per tile that occurred with Civilization 5. The second issue is that the Civ 3 scenario uses a preset map, whereas Civ 7 uses a random map. This could potentially increase the replay value, but it is a significant challenge. Some civs will spawn closer and have much better access to colonizing the new world. And making map generation that has a new world is difficult. Some people like Pangea maps, where all the civs spawn together on one big landmass. People also like archipelago maps, where traditionally there are not any big oceans separating the islands, although you could probably divide the world into two. Oh, hey, after I recorded this script, they actually put out a dev diary announcing a new map type, doing exactly that. Traditional archipelago, but with a line of ocean down the middle. Cool stuff. Now, I put out a poll, and I was actually quite surprised by the results. It turns out that Civ fans overwhelmingly prefer continents maps. I thought that continents would be second to Pangea, so this might not be as much of a roadblock in terms of player preference as you might imagine. But still, they need to twist up the map generation to produce something that fits within these new gameplay systems. There's also 3 different eras, and the map needs to work in each of them. The final issue is that this is a very finicky system that the players might just be too caveman for. You're setting up this delicate puzzle box of intricate gameplay, and they might just go ooga booga and focus on killing the enemy instead. Especially if fleets are able to take cities. This was an issue with Age of Discovery, but Age of Discovery is built around victory points as the win condition. In Civ 7, there are 4 victory conditions, and you can even win an economic victory without treasure fleets. Combat and taking cities needs to be viable, along with the other paths to victory, but these paths should not make pursuing treasure redundant. Alright, so we have these substantial challenges in front of Civilization 7. The payoff could be great, but this treasure system is also only just a quarter of one era in the game. Getting it right would only have a modest impact, but getting it wrong could have downstream effects on all the other eras. So, what will it be for Civilization 7? Well, one thing I have to praise is Civ 7's introduction of a settlement cap. Instead of carpeting the map, you're leaving more empty space between cities. In past games, all of the prime real estate on another continent would be taken by the time you unlocked ocean-going ships. But here, that's not an issue. There's plenty of space to colonize when the Age of Exploration starts. The map generation is actually surprisingly good. This is something that I expected to criticize, but in my most recent game, I actually quite liked the map that I was playing on. But it's highly dependent on the template that you choose. For example, in the Shattered Seas map type, you meet all of the other civs before you're supposed to. This messed up the missions. I wasn't clear where distant lands were supposed to be. When I reached the second era, despite this being the second highest difficulty, there were just not enough treasure producing resources for anyone here to get close to completing the legacy paths. On Pangaea maps, distant lands do exist, but even if they have resources, you're not going to get many cities on them. And this is important because Pangaea is currently the most popular map for the big Civ 7 leak that I found. Historically, it's also often been the standard map template in the multiplayer communities for earlier Civ games. This is still very early in Civ 7's multiplayer lifespan, though, so this might change later, either through DLC or multiplayer community mod work. Okay, at this point in the video, I need to confess that I've been hiding something from you. I have personal experience with making the changes that we're talking about today. If you're wondering why I present my opinions about game design with an unwarranted sense that I know what I'm talking about, I have a background in making mods for Civilization 3, some single player, but mostly multiplayer, and with the YouTube channel I have a small contingent of viewers who are willing to test whatever dumb bullshit I come up with. One of the most popular mods for multiplayer Civ 3 is Modern. It's a total overhaul mod that I designed from scratch. Since the start of 2021, about 2,200 times people have played and reported ranked matches of the mod that I made. So I'm decently good at this, some people like my stuff, but I was not capable of doing what Ed Beach is currently attempting to do. You see, while Ed Beach has been hung up on his cool pirate gameplay from Age of Discovery 20 years ago, so have I. Ed Beach gave us Regicide and City Elimination, but even in board game design, player elimination is known for being a bit harsh. I was asked by a member of the Civ 3 community if I could design a multiplayer scenario that didn't use elimination and was instead based on the victory point system. Effectively, I was tasked at making a randomized multiplayer version of Age of Discovery. I called it GeoCiv. Let me tell you a very abridged version of the dumpster fire of how that went. Okay, so the first thing people did when they tried the game was they got confused by the treasure production mechanics and immediately tried to kill each other. That was not supposed to be the focus of the scenario, so I buffed the defensive units so that there was easy counterplay. The issue is, if you buff defensive units, people think, oh, now nobody's going to bother attacking me, and then they don't build them and they still die. My solution was to take city capturing out of the game entirely by adding a unit with 900 defense that cost a single point of production. Incredibly, it is still an issue that players will fail to build this and lose their cities, but at least then you could feel justified making fun of them, saying, oh, was it too hard to build the 900 defense unit that only cost a single point of production? But from there it was like, what are we even doing? Why do you need land units if you can't take cities? So we put treasure across the map. In barbarian camps, it spawns from huts, and now whenever you take a worker or a scout, it will turn into treasure. So land units actually have a reason to exist. Okay, but now the dominant strategy is to troll plant cities on someone, especially a new player, and farm them for treasure. You could plant 3 tiles away from their capital. What are they going to do? You have a 900 defense unit inside. Do that a few times and you can turn their empire into Swiss cheese. Okay, now settlers are only produced by your capital every 7 turns, and so you have to be careful with them. And we increased the spawn rate from mining treasure, and now the winner is just the person who spawns next to the treasure, and can get their treasure home immediately without enemies having any counterplay. You really need that custom map where players spawn far away from the treasure, otherwise this just doesn't work. So I revealed the map to all players, and made them spawn with a teleportation specialist. They can instantly place down an airfield and drop their settler anywhere they want on the map, but they're gonna pick the jungles and the marshes because they now have 5 billion cows. And then the treasure resources spawn in the tundra, guaranteeing that players spawn far away from the treasure. But now they're all clustered at the equator, and players are back to just fighting at their spawn point and ignoring the treasure system. So we moved the cows to the North Pole and put the treasure at the equator. But often there's not enough tundra or jungle for good spawns, so we play on the map settings cool and wet. And I changed the map size to make it really, really tall, guaranteeing a huge distance between the equator and the North Pole. And we make all the resources constantly disappear so they can't just cluster their cities in 2 spots. Despite all this ridiculous tinkering, the core concept of Ed Beach's treasure system is really fucking cool. I brought back this dead mod to get footage, and I had this epic ending to a game. My rival had this massive treasure fleet, and I had to make a wall of ships to delay it from getting home until I could figure out how to win. I'm bringing this up for 2 reasons. First, to show devotion towards this gameplay idea, but also as a cautionary tale. I tried 5 billion ridiculous things, and I still couldn't fix the fundamental problems here. I want this to work, but when I play Civilization 7, I feel that same cycle. Them shuffling up the map gen, the lack of interactivity, as if it's constantly two changes away from being good. Currently, there's no epic pirate battles in Civ 7. The AI hardly produce treasure of their own, let alone contest you when you're trying to bring yours home. Without the tension and the conflict, this is just tedious micro. On the higher difficulties, you will get a bunch of barbarians chasing after you, but it doesn't feel right watching them trek a quarter of the way across the map, literally suiciding themselves to do non-lethal damage to your treasure convoy. One big issue that I don't think people consider much is contiguity. There is a strong set of inherent benefits to having your empire be close together. For example, it's much easier to defend four cities close together on a single island than it is to defend four cities on islands that are far apart. You need fewer units to accomplish the same level of safety. Contiguity is less of a big deal in Civilization 7 due to the removal of builders, but there are still plenty of other units like physicians and migrants for which this is still true. And if your cities are far apart, you lose a lot of tempo by walking your settlers further. All of this is to say, spawning near treasure is a massive advantage, both because it's easier to get more of it home, you get better tempo on the gold that you receive from it, but also because you're not twisting your empire into awkward shapes. In older Civ games, you don't notice this so much because everyone expands outward from their capital, but it makes a big difference, a difference that becomes more obvious when you win by placing cities on other continents. If the economic victory path is too strong, then civs that spawn near treasure resources have a huge advantage. On the flip side, if the economic victory path is too weak, then the whole system is something you'd rather ignore. It is hard to get this right. Civilization 7 introduced a board game style slate of victory point systems. The treasure fleets, but it's also present with the codices and the relics. Collect them, and that's the point of the game. Works fine for a board game, but that doesn't work for Civ. Sometimes I think that's a miracle that Civilization works at all. People tolerate, but do not like, the win conditions of the games in this series. People prefer the pursuit of instrumental goals, the accumulation of raw power as an end to itself, rather than terminal goals like victory points. That's why the switch away from legacy paths has been a success. The new GDP system rewards you for things that have more instrumental value, like making gold-producing buildings. But when it comes to treasure convoys, there are still issues with map setups, AI programming, and interactivity. I think that there's a way to make this work. I think that if Ed Beach keeps rolling that boulder up that hill, he's going to get to the top, and we'll have one thing that we can point to and say, damn, that's one thing that Civilization 7 made really cool, in addition to navigable rivers. But my personal experiences suggest that it might take a while. That's all for today. Have a good one, everybody. See you next time.